Hello, I'm Kaiser and welcome to Moose Reads. Before I get started, I want to say that the opinions that I give here are my own opinions. They are extremely subjective. If I dislike a book, it is not a reflection on the author and it is not a reflection on people who do like it. Different people have different tastes, and that's okay. Today I will be reviewing Kavik the Wolf Dog by Walt Morey. This is a children's adventure book. The description says, when Andy Evans stumbles upon the snow-covered wreckage of a small plane, he's shocked to find a survivor. Should he put the gravely injured dog out of his misery? The look in the animal's eyes says he's not ready to die. It turns out that Kavik's a champion sled dog, and soon he makes a full recovery. When his rightful owner finds out Kavik is alive, he wants the dog back, but Kavik has other ideas. I'm not going to rate this book. I just don't think it would be fair. The book is not for me, and I'm capable of recognizing that fact. This is one of my 2024 challenge books. It's for the prompt, a book with a dog on the cover. Initially, I was going to read The Plague Dogs for this, and then read Kavik in February for a book under 250 pages, but I had to DNF Plague Dogs, so it shifted up. This is a kid's book. I'm pretty sure I got it when I was very little at a book fair. Or else one of my brothers did. It's been floating around my collection for decades, and I always intended to read it because it's a book about a dog and I like those, but I just never did. The thing is, if I had read this book in a timely manner, I probably would have loved it. It isn't exactly the kind of book I used to go nuts for, but it's certainly adjacent to them. Unfortunately, as an adult, I can't enjoy it in its own right. Because the book is for children, the plot and prose are stripped down a lot for young readers. There isn't much happening in the way of character development, and none of the plot points are given much time to breathe. The story is fine, part Balto, part incredible journey, but it's also very simple. That's not a bad thing for its intended audience, it just doesn't work for me. There's really not a lot to say about this book. It's just too simple overall. However, I do think it's important to note that there is some degree of animal abuse as well as animal death in this book, which may make some readers uncomfortable. Also, the book takes place in Alaska and twice uses a word for the native peoples of Alaska that I understand is a slur. I don't think it was malicious, just ignorant, and it is only used 2 times. But it is still there, and I understand how that may hurt some readers or further normalize a word that is culturally insensitive. Like I said, there's not a lot to say about this book, but there were some aspects I would like to talk about that involve spoilers. If you don't want spoilers, now is the time to pause or close the video. For everyone else, let's talk details. The summary is a little light on details, so I'll give a brief overview of what happens. It's a short book, so it won't take long. Kavik is a sled dog. One of his parents was half wolf, and they passed their wolf-like traits on to Kavik. He wins a sled dog competition, and a man named Hunter pays a lot of money to buy him because, I think, he collects novelties. He's being transported by plane, but it crashes and Kavik is injured. A boy, Andy, finds him and brings him home to nurse him back to health. They know who Kavik belongs to, and so once he's recovered, Andy's father returns him. Hunter takes him down to Seattle, where he lives, mostly just to have. Eventually, he brings him to a club to talk about him and the race he won. While there, Hunter takes him off his leash, and Kavik escapes, intent on returning to Andy. He tricks someone into sailing him most of the way back, and then fights through Alaska to return home. Andy once again nurses him back to health. Hunter sees that he's big and strong again, tries to take him back, and Andy's father strikes a bargain to keep Kavik. Like I said, this book is very stripped down for young readers, so I didn't feel like either the part where he's meant to bond with Andy or the part where he crossed the Alaskan wilderness really had enough substance. I didn't feel that deep a connection between Kavik and Andy to begin with, so it didn't feel exceedingly convincing that he would go to such lengths to get home again. And there just didn't feel like there was all that much wilderness in the latter half of the book. One thing I really didn't like, however, and that I think might be a point of concern for intended audiences, is that on his way home, Kavik decides to mate with a wolf. Obviously, there's no real hints to what mating actually entails, but he meets a girl, fights to win her, and they start traveling together. She leads him east rather than north, and for her sake, he temporarily gives up heading home. Almost immediately, there's a death scare for his mate when they rejoin her pack and a plane flies overhead shooting at the wolves. They get separated, and when he tries to find her, he initially follows the blood trail of what turns out to be a different wolf. After they are reunited, they begin traveling together. It's a little unclear, but I got the impression that she may have been pregnant. The book talks about her getting heavier and slower, and she seems to be looking for a safe place to settle down. And then she gets killed, pretty much entirely because Kavik doesn't understand that people will hurt them and leads her to steal food. I did not like this part of the story. The fact that Kavik was interested in mating felt like it came out of nowhere. Also, because he was willing to give up finding Andy to be with the girl, it kind of diminished the strength of their bond, which is the whole point of the book. I generally don't think it's a good idea to pad your story with a plot cul-de-sac that actively detracts from the narrative you're trying to create. Before he's returned to the hunter, there's a scene where Kavik is bullied by a pack of strays, including a much smaller dog. Andy's dad says that the plane crash must have taken all the fight out of him, and later Hunter gets upset when he discovers this cowardice. I didn't care much for this part of the plot either, for multiple reasons. First of all, like everything else, there just wasn't enough time to flesh this cowardice arc out. We see it the one time in town, and Hunter tells us it happens again later, although the scene happens off-page. And then he never gets challenged again until he's fighting for his mate, at which point his cowardice seems to have entirely dissolved, with no justification beyond the instinctive desire for a mate. Once he returns to Andy and is healthy again, we see him fight the strays again, and this time he doesn't run away. I had thought the point of the cowardice plot was to let Andy keep him in the end. Hunter doesn't want him if he's a coward, and was planning to get rid of him after the presentation at the club anyway. I expected Andy to tell Hunter that they had Kavik, buy him for a significantly more reasonable price than the $2,000 Hunter paid for him in the first place, and then we'd get the second fight with the strays, and he'd be brave, but also get to stay with Andy because he'd bought him legally. Instead, the fight with the strays happens in front of Hunter before Andy has had a chance to tell him anything, so he wants Kavik back. The bargain that Andy's dad makes with Hunter is to sail his fishing boat, something he's wanted him to do for some time, but that he was unwilling to do because he, like Kavik, suffered through a traumatic event and was afraid. So Kavik's fear plot is seemingly there to parallel and then conclude Andy's dad's plot, but that plot is so inconsequential to the story that I defy anyone to really care. So yeah, there were some things I really didn't like about this book, and some of them I'm sure I would have disliked just as much as a kid, but mostly I don't think my critiques are justified. As I said, this book isn't for me, and most of the things that bother me about it are, I believe, a product of its target audience. That's not to say 8-year-olds don't deserve solid plots, but there's a delicate balance between a compelling story and a length and reading level that's approachable. I suspect this book hits that balance fairly well, but I'm no expert. That's all I have to say about Kavik the Wolf Dog. If you liked this video, I hope you'll watch more in the future. Thanks for watching this one. Bye!